CX, customer experience. It's the one thing that every client, every company will tell you differentiates whether customers really come back, whether customers really give you time of the day. Companies focused on functionalities, companies focused on services, companies focused on solutions. The one thing that everybody sees common is customer experience. Anil, let me ask the first question to you. Companies have always had segmentation. For as long back as I can remember, even a brand like PepsiCo has had different products for different cohorts. So segmentation has always been there, right? In the last few years, especially with the advent of big data and the availability of data about consumers, this has now moved into a term called hyper-personalization, right? Different terminologies, but eventually what we want to know is what's actually practically possible. In an ideal state, you could target me as an individual consumer or any of the individuals who raise their hand, but that's an ideal state. So where are we today? Do you still have cohorts of a few million? Is it down to a cohort of one? What's really possible today? And what's Pepsi doing this? Or what are some other brands that you really look up to doing in this?
What companies are struggling, and not struggling because the technology is not there, is struggling because the information of the data point is not there. Imagine you start in the morning from your house. I track your activity of the day. So you start, maybe you are a bachelor or forced bachelor. You buy your breakfast with coffee on particular shop. You go to your office on the way, you finish your breakfast. And I have your detail, your information in my system somehow, and then send you a product detail or product information, and you are entering into the outlet. Imagine what will happen. I can assure you, you may be planning to buy something else. There is a good possibility that you will buy my product. And that is where we as a company, trying to reach there, we are still not there. We have done some product development, some data and other stuff. We are still launched in some particular markets. We are learning the nuances and doing it. It's very difficult in our kind of business because of the product, because of the customer segmentation. But if you talk about automobile, for example, let's talk about automobile. I know that you bought a vehicle 4 years back. You bought this kind of vehicle. And I know somehow, collecting your data, that you change vehicle every 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. What kind of choices you have, and then I track what is your age of the vehicle, and then I target you, send you, my product detail, some of my product offers. Trust me, you will end up buying, those kind of things. So this is how I see it. Coming back to your specific question, I have not seen any organization in food and beverage kind of industry, or for that matter, in FMCG also. Achieving the 100% hyper-personalization. People are trying, companies are trying, investing a lot of money and developing the solution, maturing those solutions and products, so that we can achieve.
I think that's helpful. So that's telling us that from a food and beverages standpoint, there is still a lot of growth to go from a hyper-personalization perspective. We're not really there yet.
We are not.
Let me bring in Gautam on this. Gautam, you work with a lot of companies, F&B and non-F&B, and what has been your experience in this? How is it that non-F&B companies are faring from a hyper-personalization standpoint? Any examples you can share with us?
Yeah, so keep in mind that, as Anil Sharma said, a lot of this depends on the data, right? And if you look at the industries that have actually had the maximum amount of data, FSI stands out, correct? This, over a period of time, because of the last few years, there's been a lot of developments, right? Starting with GDPR and then the third-party cookie expiration and privacy concerns and all of that stuff. And all of this, even before the DPDP Act and everything, India has been catch up to all of those, right? So, because of this awareness, a lot of businesses across industries, including the particular CPG and food and beverages have made a lot of effort in capturing first-party data information, correct? To various degrees of success. CPG, for example, they have had a lot more success than food and beverage, right? It makes sense, right? If I'm going to, like, say, for example, one of the common ways of investing is to build your own direct-to-consumer business, right, or e-commerce portal, right? It makes sense if I'm going to sell you a high value product like a refrigerator or an air conditioner because there are margins that are available. But if I'm going to do water bottles and soda and things like that, where the margins are not very high, and the behavior is also not the same thing, right? It's very different, and then you have to invest in the logistics and all that stuff. The ROI for those things are very, very dramatically different. Correct. So because of this, we have seen a number of the industries across the board have a reasonable amount of anything from reasonable to a lot of data, right? In terms of understanding and knowing their customers. Now the challenge with all of this, even for the FSI, is now for them, data is not really the problem. The real challenge is breaking down all of those data silos, right? And putting together in the hands of the marketer or the channel owner. Because the window of opportunity, correct, is very, very limited from a marketing perspective. The customer is there for a very specific period when he's during the consideration phase and into the conversion phase. And if the marketer does not get the insight in that time frame, right, and she does not help him with the creative within that time frame, the opportunity is lost. Correct? These are the two biggest challenges. Specifically coming from our data perspective, this is what they have been doing, and this is what we have been helping our customers, is to break down these data silos, to bring it all together in a manner that the marketers can actually use this data to understand who is this customer, what channel is he engaged with me in right now, and what is the intent, right, and the propensity, and then prioritize them and go after them to nudge them towards conversion. Right. So we're seeing a lot of traction in the FSI. It's getting a lot of traction. Travel and hospitality is another industry where there's a lot of, again, they're doing a lot of stuff there. Retail is another one. CPG is one where last 3 years we have seen a lot of increase in adoption and going directly to the customer and leveraging this. Now, to the other question which you asked him, which is 100% hyper-personalization, where are they? Is there, are the cohorts of millions and all of that stuff? That is being determined right now by more of their campaign strategy and data availability, right? And the prior rather than technology problems.
Very helpful. I think this gives us some very good food for thought. I'm going to come back to something you said, but before that, I want to take another cut of the same question, actually, for you. A lot of what Gautam and Anil said is applicable from a classical business perspective. But Gautam also left a tidbit over there, which I want to pick up on, which is D2C, direct to consumer. A lot of companies, he said, have today acquired first-party data on the back of their direct to consumer businesses. And that leads me to the question that, is everything that's been said so far equally true and equally applicable for a digital native business? Could be D2C, could be not. Or are you seeing something different when you look at digital native businesses versus classical businesses in the market? Any differences you're seeing between these two segments?
Just take away for a minute that I am sitting here as a marketer and want to sell my products to you, right? But I am also a consumer at the end of the day. I consume data. I am a customer. I buy products, right? And I will tell you my own personal thing. I use platforms and services which are very personalized for me, where I've given restrictions that, only this what I need. That sometimes we end up creating that kind of, filter bubble that consumer themselves wants to really get out of it. Yes, they can. I can, exit out of that, personalized options that I have selected for myself. But that is a call that I have to take and actually move out. But I don't have time to even do it. Is there a way marketers or brand can talk to me? Can you still attract me? Can you still surprise me? That is a question we all have to put on table, which cuts that concept of personalization and hyper-personalization and creating something which is very, which is surprising for the end customers, right? Now, my friends here must be thinking about, Anjali, are you talking about dark pattern? Because today there is a concept of dark pattern as well, right? That marketers end up talking and enticing you to buy some other product which you don't intend to buy. Is that really a bad thing, or it is the thing that we also need as consumers in the first place, right? So that is what it is. Now, no matter you are a classic organization or you're a digital native organization, you have to really understand how your consumers consume products and services, what their needs of today's are and wants of tomorrow's would be, right? And then construct your solutions around it. That's my quick take on it.
Understood. Gautam, let me now pick up something you said. You said that for the, let's say, top 1 million customers where there is a lot of business, companies are segregating it and segmenting it much more finely, whereas for the rest it might be a slightly larger cohort. And you've got a lot of data silo problem in companies which we're all familiar with, right? How has the advent of AI influenced this and impacted this? So with AI today, is the problem of data silos still as difficult to manage, or has that problem statement to some extent come down, particularly from a cost standpoint and efforts?
Not fully. Okay. In fact, I would even go to the extent of saying that in at least in some cases, AI is actually exaggerating the problem of data silos, or highlighting the problem of data silos that you didn't even know existed, or you were ignoring it till now. Right? That's the reality of it. Okay.
Can you give an example of that?
See, I'll just give you a simple example, right? This whole thing of data silos, and I think Vaishak also mentioned this in the morning keynote, isn't a new problem, right? Ever since we started having data and applications, we started storing them in different databases from the get-go, and we have continued that till date, right? And businesses don't always grow organically, and there's a lot of inorganic growth that businesses go through, and technology evolution as well, that also by definition leads to data silos, right? We started with MDM and all of that stuff, then we went into data warehouse, now we went into data lakes, now we are talking into customer data platforms. This is an ongoing problem and we are continuing to solve that. The fact that we are continuing to solve that tells you that the problem continues to exist. Correct? Advent of AI doesn't do any of that stuff. In fact, the reason why I say AI exaggerates the problem is it is an entity that actually starts to beg you to feed it more and more data. Correct? Now, the problem with feeding it more and more data is that your data are in certain systems that won't lend itself to easily exporting it and sending it, right? Second, you have to figure out what this data means and how it fits into the larger context, which basically means in simple language, stitch it, unify it. But that's exactly the problem that we have been solving for the last 25 years. How do we just get in an AI model into it and suddenly all of those problems vanish? No, it doesn't vanish, right? So customers and organizations that have tackled this to a large extent, right? For example, in the world, again, FSI, because of regulations and all of that stuff, they were forced to do some of these things already. They are in a much better position to feed meaningful data into. It's one thing to collect your data in a common place, but another thing to figure out, do I need a data scientist? Do I need a data analyst to do this? What kind of reporting do I really need? How to get all of those things out? That's where you're seeing a lot of efficiency improvement, which potentially has the ability to lead to cost reduction.
5 years back, your laptop was having 8 GB of memory was sufficient. How many of you are thinking that even 32 GB of memory is not sufficient?
Almost all of us, right?
It's because of all those things which you're talking about. This is one example. Second example is the data, the storage. Storage is increasing like this. Efficiency is increasing, no doubt, but cost of ownership somehow, I personally, because I'm owning the budget and I know the budget is increasing, it's not decreasing. This is my personal opinion.
Perfect. I think this gives us a lot of insights, and personally I'm very excited because what this is leading me to conclude is to say that it's still the first day from a marketeer's standpoint in hyper-personalization. The book is yet to be written. There's a lot that still needs to be done. Let me ask one last question before we close, which is that, there's a lot of doomsday talk about AI as well, particularly from a marketing standpoint. So, for example, I recently read an article which said that if AI is going to personalize every experience and every consumer of your brand is going to interact with AI, then What is the need of all of this? And is that somewhere going to be disruptive to the business itself? Any thoughts? Do you think that AI is going to necessarily play a role for the better only? Or are there some aspects that you're thinking AI is going to transform completely, which may not necessarily go the way we're thinking it goes right now?
I can go
Yeah.
for it. I will have a lot of stories to narrate here, to be very precise. Right? I completely disagree with any fear that comes along with the AI, to be very honest, because see, but first, we really need to understand, yes, this is a tool which is bringing more efficiency on the table, making us, do tasks faster comparatively, right? Things that we don't want to really do, it does it for us. But there is no substitute or an alternative towards human emotions that humans can understand, right? AI or these kind of tools, or maybe tomorrow we have humanoids also coming in, they will be imitating that they understand human emotions and sentiments and their wants. But you really need humans to really craft stories that you remember forever. Now, I can quote few examples here, right? I know a lot of you people were following news, right? So there is, Porsche, right? The car, right? So of lately, they came up with a concept where they have actually their ad campaign or the advertisement that they created is all hand-drawn characters. Obviously, they use CGI as well, but they're hand-drawn characters, right? Now, why they have done it is it's such a huge success today. And if you see that ad, you say, oh, fantastic! It's an old way of saying, how beautiful the car is, how effectively it functions and it does the job, right? But it's all hand-drawn things. While we have AI, which can actually do, create some fantastic 3D characters, but why we have, I would say, disowned AI for that matter, for that, that ad, because we want to really go back and say that if you have to connect with human beings, you really need to understand their emotions, their perspective, understand the skills, the capability the humans come up with.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us for this session, and thank you for being a wonderful audience.